Hi, folks. So I just wanted to give a couple disclaimers before we start. First of all, it's been a minute, and we're so happy to be back, and we'll be picking up the pace again now that we've recovered from sickness and busyness and end of year school stuff. I have a senior who just graduated, actually, and a preschooler who just graduated. So it's been a busy time. So a couple of things. One, we had quite a few technical difficulties in this one. So there's a little bit of jumping around. The video, especially, the audio is mostly okay. The video is a little choppy and weird, and I switched cameras a couple times. So just pardon that. Sorry about that. We're still working out the kinks. That's one. Two, we are talking about the New Age in here and some very specific experiences that are personal to us and sort of our encounters with something that we call the New Age, although we have some disclaimers within it about what we mean by that. And some of it is probably a little bit hard to hear. We went back and forth about releasing this in some ways because there are parts of the time where, okay, Kristin said it so well. The path of Christ is a narrow path. And so it is difficult. It can be harsh, but it's so difficult and so, I don't know, painful at times to say, hey, I think what you believe really isn't good. It's not correct. Like, truth is a zero-sum game. There's only one truth. And so, we want to point you to the truth and we want to point you to Christ, but we really want to do it in a loving way. And so I just want to say that I think this is really valuable and good. I think that it's compassionate. But if it's not, please know that we are the ones with the flaws, not Christ. Please know that he always just wants more of you. He wants you, that he's pursuing you. If you're listening to this, I believe that he's pursuing you. So just know that is on us. If it's imperfect, well, it's certainly imperfect, but if it hurts you, please forgive us. That's the other thing. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things that maybe not the best way. We're not real Bible scholars or theologians. And I think that's partly what is so good about it, because it's a space that's safe to ask those big questions, or those questions that feels like you might be silly, or that a seasoned Christian isn't going to want to hear or know how to answer. But I don't know, with that, there are some challenges too. And we are working and developing those skills as well. So just please forgive us if it's not kind. And let us know if something doesn't strikes you in a bad way, or something doesn't feel good to you when you hear it. Like, that's going to happen, and that doesn't mean it's not true. But also, if it was said in a way that's not compassionate or loving, or you feel like there's something you want to communicate with us in a loving way, please do that. We're totally open to that. Okay. Lastly, I just want to let people know, because I forgot to mention this in here, that for instances like this podcast that you're about to hear, where we sometimes have lots of technical difficulties and we're sort of using spit and duct tape and baling wire to hold this podcast together. So with that in mind, we are getting ready to launch a paid subscription. We've been talking about it for a while, but now we have enough pledge supporters that we're about to do it. So this will be your last chance pretty soon to do it for $5 a month. After that, it's going to be the typical $8 a month, I believe. And with that, though, you're going to be getting regular content. I'm also starting a series really soon that's going to be a small series, but talking about screw tape letters, just me for a little bit, taking one letter at a time with some really short podcasts. So that'll be coming up soon. So if you want, you can go on your desktop and you can go to your subscriptions and you can pledge to subscribe to us, so that when that day comes, when we turn the subscriptions on, you will get the price that it is right now. It's locked in. But after we turn it on, we're going to restore the price to the regular price to support this, so that we can start getting in some software and some things to do better quality for you. This was a longer intro than I meant to do, but I really just want this to be a blessing to you. That's all we want to do with all of this. So I felt that the disclaimer was necessary, and it might not have been. It may be overkill, but I never think it's a mistake to be too gentle or too loving. And I might be wrong about that, but I mean, someone's going to have to tell me that and convince me otherwise. So you are wanted here, no matter where you are in your journey. And I hope that what we say delivers that and it comes across to you. And, we love you. There aren't a ton of you yet, but we love all of you so much. So thanks for being with us, and get ready, because it is really fun, and it's Kristin and Elise and I, and, we have a blast. So enjoy. Hi.
Hi.
That's Elise Keller and Kristin Giacopelli.
Yay, and that's Elizabeth White.
And this is Theology.
Theology.
Theology. Oh, we're back with Kristin again. Yay. Kristin, was our last one with you?
I think so.
I think so. This is just part two.
Yeah, let's go for
Other
part.
side of the world.
We promised a part two. We're here, and Kristin is again coming to. So this is Kristin Giacopelli. We introduced her on the last one. She owns the Wellness Center in Rockland County, New York. I think I still got that right.
Wholeness Center.
Wholeness Center, wellness. Why do I want it to be wellness every time? Do I do that every time? Wellness Center.
No, I don't think so.
I was so proud of myself for remembering the county it was in that I just skipped right over that. I was like, I don't care what it's called. It's called something. The Wholeness Center, which makes a lot more sense, actually, considering what it is. And also from the internets. And Elise, again, is a bundle of hair screaming on the internet. And I am the internet's fake librarian and fake theologian and fake everythinger. So we've had a little bit of a hiatus. So do we want to talk a little bit about what's just been going on? And I don't know, just kind of get people back up to speed, get ourselves back up to speed. Because, you know, I've been really sick. Like, for me, that's been part of it, is I've been super, super sick because pollen. Basically because pollen.
Which it's really bad here. I'm in Ohio and it's horrible here, but Elizabeth has been really sick. I've been just busy with life stuff, house stuff. The weather got really nice here, so just working on, I could pan around, but we're not going to scare anyone with the things that I'm undertaking here in my backyard, because that's where I'm hailing from. And I'm like a pretend Elizabeth is a fake librarian. I'm a fake contractor in my spare time. And so that's what we've been doing, I guess. Just being sick and being contractors.
Perfect. Have you ever thought about when I've been like undertaking a really big project like this, I'm like, I could just get my contractor's like what if I just got my contractor's license and did this? Like, I could do it.
I do think that as far as, like pricing things and like sourcing things, I of course always think about that side of it. I'm like, how much would this entail, really? Like, like how hard could it be?
See, for me, it's just hubris. It's just thinking I can do this. Like, I could do it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm the ideas guy. You know what I mean? Like, every day I'm like, I have brand spanking new ideas, and then it's like, well, how does one go about actually doing that?
And then you figure it out, because you're a contractor.
Yep, you just kind of do your own thing.
Kristin, what's been going on with you?
What's been going on with me? I've been trying to find my way into the church more here, and also I've just been like fatigued and inflamed, and also just trying to like figure out what's going on and come back to homeostasis. So
yeah.
Is there a big weather change? Because like we're changing, we're heading into spring, or I guess we are into spring, but you're headed into like winter.
Yes. Yeah. So it's definitely cooler. We also had like 2 months of rain or something. It was like ridiculous. It was the most like consecutive days of rain that they've had like maybe ever, or on record. And so, yeah, it was like really rough. Now we've had some sunny days. It's cool, but it's getting better.
That's good. That's good, because so I think the weather is a big part of like, I mean, for sure why we're all getting sick, but there's this like crazy, the pollen count in the US is insane right now.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
It's like in Texas, but the ragweed count is 1,000% of the usual this year. 1,000.
Yeah, something's
wrong. It's actually because of rain, because of getting a lot more rain. Like, I grew up in a drought in California my whole life, to the point that like I feel guilty if I say like enough of the rain. But like, we have not had a drought for the last several years. We've had more rain than I've experienced in my whole life in like the last couple of years. And it's why we're blooming like this. It's so terrible. I mean, it's good for the aquifer and whatever, but like it's bad for my allergies. So
I just don't think it's natural. I just feel I'm putting the tinfoil hat on, and I'm just like, this is all contrived,
weird,
controlled weather, and I'm not.
That implies that you took your tinfoil hat off.
Yeah.
First, to have to put it back on. You just took it off for Pilates, right?
Yeah, I just, I have moments where I decide to not talk in that way, and then it's like hidden. And then I'm like, okay, I'm
Deep in the
just
pocket though.
Took it off for a minute.
yeah.
No, my husband says that you're radicalizing me, you two. Like you're I'm like, no, they're just fashioning me a really
I
nice
love
tinfoil hat.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's exactly what it is.
You just
so,
put it on a string,
you
it
know,
hangs on the back sometimes, and then when you're
Yeah.
ready, you just,
it's just kidding. I'm gonna start with the tiara. Okay, it's light.
Yeah.
It'll come just a tinfoil tiara.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there. But I think I'm gonna go easy, and I'm gonna start with
I have
tinfoil.
a full like 10-gallon hat.
10 gallon. Yes. I was gonna say tinfoil tiara, Elise, would be like such a perfect like web handle for you, except that it's way too delicate and dainty. Like you are all delicate and dainty, but your tinfoil hat needs to be a 10-gallon hat. So
Yeah.
but I really like tinfoil tiara, and I'm doing something with that.
That's a cute,
We're
yeah,
gonna,
that's
we're gonna
great.
keep that.
Yeah.
Trademark, guys. Nobody. No. Well, we're off to a great start. Very serious podcast. So good thing.
Well, this one is kind of like off the cuff. We're just spitballing here because we're just getting reacclimated to this space.
That's true. That's true. And we've had something that's come up. So, okay, let's be very clear with everyone, because everybody may not know that just because we haven't been talking on our podcast does not mean that we haven't been talking around the clock, because so the three of us are all on different time zones. So it's usually while the other is sleeping, but we have this like ongoing, conversation. So we have things we've been discussing that we're just like, let's put a pin in that. We'll do it on the podcast. We'll do it on the podcast, because basically the conversation that started with Kristin's last episode has just never stopped. We've just been going since then.
Yeah.
But they're like, the camera's turned off, but the three of us just kept going.
Yeah.
For like a month.
It is that.
And so it's been an interesting experience. Like, we have had a different experience because having Kristin on as a guest, and then the people that you were able to share it with, and like your network, we've had some stuff come up, like some different things that we've been able to discuss since then. And so that's part of our part two. We're gonna talk about that, but really we don't have a big agenda except that we're gonna talk. And I figure the three of us, we can fill up an hour just like that, probably 2 to 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like easily.
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to just say that, like, in case it wasn't clear in the last episode, or if nobody listened to that one, that I'm a renewed Christian, and I was in the New Age for like more than 25 years and considered myself spiritual, still believed in God, did not believe in Jesus necessarily. Like, it was like I just kind of left that. And so I have a lot of friends who probably would identify as spiritual, maybe not New Age, but I would classify it in the New Age. Just because, like, I think when people start like sort of aggregating, like pulling from all these different traditions and trying to just create their own thing, maybe the technical term is agnostic for that, but I just think it's such a common new agey thing to do, and I was doing it too.
Right.
And so I think, just knowing that that's sort of the context, like I still have a lot of friends who are not Christian, and also some that are not spiritual. And like, one of the best things that came out of our podcast was just that it made people think about some things that they either wouldn't have thought about or don't think about regularly, or it just gave them more things to consider. And so I really loved that. And then they brought a lot of questions to me.
Which is like so good, like what we want.
I was like, oh, I'm the scholar. I'm the fake scholar right now. I was like,
ask a fake theologian about this. Like,
yeah, it's like I need to bring this to my people. So and then I have you two to talk to, and then I also have this couple at church that I've become close with, and she's been a Christian for 30 years, and her husband grew up in it, and he's also explored all the denominations, like even Messianic Judaism and like all these things. So they're so knowledgeable as well. So I'm not going to pretend like I have answers. But it definitely helped me because it feels like then it bounced back where it was like, oh, okay, now I have all these
Right.
questions that I want to ask. Like they were their questions, but then it opened up other ones that were mine. So
I'll also add like a kind of a disclaimer that we'll use we use New Age as sort of a catch-all like here, even though we realize that like a lot of these practices are ancient, but I think you really capture the thing, Kristin. It's the way that they're blended together and they're aggregated into something new that it's like for the most part we can call it New Age. Like if somebody is taking like the practices from yoga, and then there's crystals, and there's Hinduism, like it's, and there's Buddhism, like people, a lot, those tend to be a lot of them that are mixed in. So maybe a better word for this would be like spiritualism, but
Yeah.
but New Age just rolls off the tongue a lot better, and I think we like colloquially understand more instantly what that means than we do with other terms. So we use that, but like understand that we don't mean it to be reductive. I just find it to be the most descriptive and like concise way to say that.
yeah.
If that's fair. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I like even that you said it's agnostic, because I hadn't thought about it like that, because that is, I mean, really, that is kind of what most people are talking about at the end of the day. It's like, yeah, I believe in God. I believe in some sort of higher power. And then like that's kind of where it ends.
Yeah.
It's funny
So
because I
that was,
never thought of it
yeah,
agnostic that way. I think of agnostic as secular for some reason.
okay.
Like that's
Mm.
not really accurate, but for some reason in my head, I just realized that that's
Yeah.
funny because that's not really it. That's not really it. But you know what? I think where that comes from is because I run an interfaith organization, and because it's interfaith, like sometimes people from different faiths will be like, "Oh, but it's a Christian organization or it's a Jewish organization. I can't give." And I'm like, it's an interfaith. It's all religions, which basically now is secular. But actually, agnostic could be a better way to say it. Like so I think of it as secular when you get all of them in there. But like interfaith is truly because we're not doing. But so I think that's why I had that in my head. But that's an interesting. I do like that. Agnostic is good.
Yeah. So I just looked it up just to see what the dictionary says, and it says a person who holds the view that any ultimate reality, such as God, is unknown and probably unknowable. Then the second one is a person who is unwilling to commit to an opinion about something. And then it goes into the adjective of it. And the third one under there says not preferring a particular device or system, usually used after a noun. So I feel like it is very like I
All
believe in something, but I don't know what I'm believing
yeah.
in
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah, I think like I can see that as an agnostic way of looking at it. If people wouldn't label themselves specifically, like identify as agnostic, it's a descriptor. So I think that's really good, and just helpful to share that language. And um, like also there are two pieces of this, which is like the answers to the specific questions that come up, but it's also like the general thing about either about like we evangelize and we're like called to evangelize, but then we're also like we answer questions, and like those aren't always the same thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if like that's a good place to start, but we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I
I
guess it's
think,
like this. Like, yeah. Well, go
go
ahead
ahead.
first.
I was just gonna say that I think that giving a disclaimer is often what I do if I'm talking to somebody who is decidedly non-Christian. Like, I'm not trying to tell you
Hmm.
you have to believe, or like I'm not here to like convert you or what. Like I give some sort of disclaimer like that where I'm just like, I'm laying out to you where I'm at. And then and I'm sharing with you my experience. I don't have all the scholarly knowledge, like, because some of the questions are like, well, how do you know the Bible is true? And I'm like, there are like serious biblical scholars who can lay that out for you in a way that like would be probably impossible for me. Certainly would be impossible for me at this very moment. But like in general, it's like not a way that my brain usually works, like retaining all of that kind of thing. And so I usually have to like lay it out, like I'm gonna share something with you, but this is like my experience, and I'll try my best to answer the questions, but I don't have the answers really. Like that's that's often how I kind of start, so that at least it kind of like takes any like, I want to say like inflammation out, because people are so like, don't, you know, like I'm not religious, or like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
whatever, or I don't want to have to believe in Jesus, or, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can like jump right over that first initial gut reaction, because there's such a difference. You can tell if someone is asking you like why do you think like the Bible is true? Like how do you think that's true? And it's not, they're not asking you to convince them. They're not asking you to proselytize to them. They're asking, what people are really asking is, do you think the Bible is true? That's, I
Yeah.
believe that deep down they're saying, like, do you, Kristin, do you think that the Bible is true? And you can say yes. And the reason that we don't like, it's the same thing. I don't retain, like, I have figured out at one point why I think the Bible is true. Like I spent, you know, I'll spend years on it. And then like, you ask me 5 years later and I'm like, I don't know, I definitely figured it out at some point why I think that. And I know that I think that, but now there were reasons, there were really good reasons, but like, I don't know.
Come on
Like,
to
let me
other.
Google that for you.
Yeah.
Now, Elise knows that that's the kind of stuff that she holds in her brain.
I am good with like, I have like a very photogenic memory, and so I am good with, you know, like with that sort of stuff. But I agree that like I like recently, like I've had, you guys know this, but I've had Jehovah's Witnesses for some reason like canvassing my neighborhood, and I would never do that. Like I mean not as a Jehovah's Witness, but just in general, like I would never seek out somebody to try to convince them of this, because I don't really think you can. Like someone has to come to this sort of, like you can always plant the seed. I like to say like crack the eggshell. It's just by something you say, but you're not going to, even with like a debate, like I love to listen to a debate, but at the end of the day, I very rarely like, oh, that side has convinced me then of, you know, of the other side. So I just don't see it like that. Like I don't see the point of and I know plenty of people who are like hardcore Christians and will even like evangelize. It's like, you're not Christian enough, so like let me, you know, like let me try to convince you now of like these very like Christian points. And it's like, you don't gotta convince me. Like I'm here, I'm good. So
And
that's
it's
just, I mean
not,
that's just, yeah.
it's not a nice feeling. Like,
It's not. Like I don't want to be lectured to.
yeah.
P.S. Wait, I just need a disclaimer. My shirt says "Get High," but also it's a Wim Hof. Like I feel like everyone can see it, so I just want to say it's a Wim Hof shirt, and there's lungs on it. It's "Get High on Your Own Supply." So don't think that I'm just
She's
out
lying.
here.
It says get high
Get
on weed
high on
drugs.
drugs. Yeah.
I would love it even more if it was like, get high on Jesus. So we're like, we're not
Get high on
proselytizing. We're not.
We're not proselytizing, but you're gonna, now I will, my clothes can proselytize. I am all for that.
I know.
But no,
I am really,
like,
yeah.
just think about yourself at any other point in time, and if somebody had just been like, you know, I really think you need Jesus, like I mean, there's, that doesn't come off, but like,
Offensive. And like so again, like I'm in Ohio, and I mean, I guess Ohio's not the Bible Belt, but like, man, we have some really aggressive. Yeah, I know. It kind of is. And so we have this big like fair once a year, and it's like fairly famous. Like people travel for it. But anyway, one of the things that we always get are these booths. Like, where are you, you know, you've seen all the street signs and whatever, like where are you going after you die or whatever. And these people will like come up to you, and it's like so aggressive. And the one year I was with my brother, and he's just like the wrong person to like he got into this with this woman, and I'm like, Nick, just leave her alone.
yeah, because
But
you're not gonna change her mind either.
yeah, like don't, exactly, because you're not going to change their mind either. And that's kind of how I feel. Like I told you guys, I was like ready for these Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm like, I don't think your theology is right. But then at the end of the day, it's like, well, you're trying to convince me of something. I don't really want to try to convince you of something. I mean, we can have a nice conversation, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
And like, it comes up sometimes, there opportunities do come up. Like, there are people, so it's kind of a nuanced thing. There's not like a hard and fast rule. It's like, this is when you tell them about it, and this is when you don't. Because you don't, okay, bottom line is you don't have to. The way that it works is like, I mean, look at your own lives, look at your own path, back, you're rekindling, you're renewing. Like, look at your path back. No person was like, Elise, I'm gonna like cast out, I'm gonna reel you in, I'm gonna bring you along that path.
Yep.
And like bring you ever closer. God did that.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's how he does it. And then what he like, Christians are often the bait. Like, we often are like, I want to see the when Christians are living in the Holy Spirit and are having their moments where they're good at it, where they're looking like Christ and they're living like Christ. People are like, what is that? I would like some of that. Like, I want to feel like that. I want to live like that. There is a joy that does come eventually. It does not come without heartache, and you can't explain that the joy is under this thing. I mean, the bad things. But people can see it. People can see the way you live. And
you pause.
How much did I freeze?
You're freezing a lot.
So
you may want to
shoot.
Go back.
You said, I feel like where it really dropped out was like you were talking about people can see the joy, and then it dropped out from there.
So in a Christian, like, ideally with a Christian, your joy is something that people can see. They see that it undergirds everything in your life. That's, I think, one of the signs of a believer. First of all, they're the fruits of the Spirit, right? Which are really good. And maybe Elise can look those up more, because I can remember goodness, kindness, patience, self-control. There are more of them.
Yeah.
Humility, maybe?
Huh?
Humility? Is that one of them?
Okay. I don't know. I can't tell. Both times I heard, did you say nobility?
Humility.
Not that. Humility? I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't know. Humility. Oh, this is bad. My computer sucks right now, and I hope that this whole thing isn't a mess.
I know you're just
worst case scenario.
I mean, maybe it's just the video. I don't know about like the audio.
If the sound is fine, we'll leave it. We'll do what we can, and I'll piece it together. If this just like keeps up, we can switch over to Zoom, and I can patch it together too. I mean, to Zoom on my phone or something and patch it. So ideally, we're going to show the fruits of the Spirit. We're going to show patience and love and joy.
And self-control.
Self-control. Goodness, kindness, peace, patience, self-control. I don't know. So when you have those, like, it does show. Like, one of the things that it's probably Paul, this sounds like Paul, who says, like, be ready to give a reason for the hope that you have. And it's not like, because Jesus is definitely, like, I know because, like, the council of this year and the candidate, like, that's not the answer. It's because of Jesus. Because Kristin, you said this to someone recently, because I believe what Jesus said. I believe who he said he was. Like, that's the answer.
Yeah.
There is more, and if they want more, that is a jumping off point. But that is a jumping off point that shows your position. This is not an academic conversation, because
You're freezing.
Nothing is going to happen. That can't happen first. It just, I mean, I'm freezing again. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I give up. I think I'm going to stop this, and we're going to switch.
I'm just going to, like, I'm holding my phone now. I'm holding it the wrong angle. I didn't want to, like, we're keeping it anyway, because something has to work. Like, I can't keep messing with it. All right. So I'm pardon the million interruptions. But I'm going to jump back in and talk about.
Okay, I'm ready.
We were talking about. Okay. Whoa, okay. We were talking about, like, evangelizing and asking questions, and, like, the fact that we don't have to seek people out to tell them about it. Like, it's okay to be out there spreading the word, but it's really how we live our lives. You know, I have several lives, not lives. Yeah. It's how we live our lives. Right. And, but also it's like, you know, we talk about it. It's part of your, like, everyday language. Like, when I don't make a point to, like, proselytize, but I also definitely don't keep it a secret. Like, I definitely talk about my faith and talk about the things that I do in my life that have to do with my faith. So, like, people know, if you're in my life, you know that I'm a believer, I'm whatever, a Jesus freak person. So, like, if you have a question, you know you can ask me, and people do. Like, people ask, like, not, I mean, I know us in this group, but not just that. Like, it's my friends, my employees, my coworkers, like, It's a faith-based organization, so I can. So like before, don't sue me. But also there's like, I don't know, it just comes up all the time for me. And I think it's just part of it is I've asked God for opportunities though too. I've been like, hey, I really want opportunities to share. And boy did he answer that. So yeah, it's not like initial. We don't have to like seek people out and do this whole evangelizing in that way. Like we're not going door to door. We're not holding up signs at intersections. But like, and sometimes when people ask, they are asking about your hope. They are asking how do I feel this way? They're asking how they can get to know Jesus, how they can get to know the Bible. But if they're asking academic questions, like, or big questions, a lot, they know that like you don't have 12 hours to answer that. Like some of these things, like, well, you guys, like, look at this, you can see my light fixture that's broken. I love that that's showing. This is the attic. Okay, I'm in the attic. What do you want? So like, so distracting. So like you get these questions that are like that one, like why do you think the Bible is true? Or like, why do you think Jesus is Christ? Or why do you really think that Jesus is the only way? Like you can say yes, there's like a short answer, but the long answer to that is I've spent 30 years figuring it out. There are scholars who spend their lifetimes, like there are lots of, like, it's not something you can necessarily piece together. So part of it is figuring out what question they're asking and why they're asking it. It's not even a question you can answer for them.
I think it's also what also came up for me was that you're not questioning like Buddhist texts this way. You're not looking at these other so Buddhism, of course, does not like to be referred to as a religion, but essentially operates like one in so many ways. And so it's like you're not looking at these other texts in the same way that you are with the Bible. Like there's such a very particular, like
it's scrutiny.
Yeah. There's definitely a very particular thing. Before we keep going though, I wanted to ask if we can just maybe make a distinction between what is proselytizing and what is evangelizing, because I kind of use them interchangeably, and I don't even know if that's correct.
Yeah, I would use them interchangeably. So I think maybe proselytizing has a little bit more of a like an unwanted association, like a more of a
like preachy.
Yeah, preachy and like uninvited. Whereas evangelism could be, or you could be evangelizing to people that like want you to. I don't know, but I think that's a nuance. I think they are basically interchangeable. Whereas like witnessing or answering questions or things would be different, but those two are I think they're good to use interchangeably.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and I just wanted to say that like that I agree with you. Like what has been showing up in my life is that like just opportunities for conversations where, I don't necessarily expect it. I'm not hiding my belief. I'm not hiding, like I will mention God, all of those things. And I'm like trying to find like what is the most base level message that I'd want to get across. And I feel like Jesus is usually too far, like it's too much for people. And so I'm usually just trying to point them to God. Like just like God is not the same as the universe, and like talk to God. Like if you're curious about anything, like just talk to God and like understand that the universe is something God created, but it is not like the creator, and like that's not interchangeable, because a lot of people I feel like are doing that where they're just like it's all the same and it's all God and it's like whatever. And I'm just like, there are distinctions to be made. And if you've never had any kind of demonic encounters and all of that kind of stuff, that actually not everything is God. Like if you can see that there's evil in the world, then you have to know that there is that not everything is God actually. And so like and then that gets, it opens up a lot of other questions, but it's it's like the very base level. I'm like, please just talk to God, have your own relationship with God, like let God answer your questions. Like, I'm not here to do that. I'll have a conversation. I'm happy to, but like, I'm not going to like, I'm not going to satisfy what you're looking to satisfy is usually what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too,
Yeah.
it's combative. Like it's like you just want to almost have an argument. Sometimes people just want to have they want to have that debate. And it's like, that's not really what I'm going for. We can, but
Yeah, that does come up too.
yeah.
And also sometimes this is a thing I do. I will sometimes ask a question that almost seems combative, but it's like what I'm actually doing is thinking like, I know people are going to ask me this. When they ask me this, what am I going to say? Because I am not prepared, and not like being combative, but like, I know that.
Yeah. Like, how do I respond?
Yeah. And that comes up, or folks that are like, I don't know, maybe there is an assumption that you really can. You're a Christian, you should be able to answer all this. Like, but I don't think if people stop for like 1 second, they'd be like, yeah, I'm not a theologian. I didn't study this my whole, like, people study it their whole lives. But Kristin, the other thing that you've got I think you've said that to me before. You've mentioned that before about like, we don't scrutinize other texts that way. That like blew my mind kind of when you said that, because that I had never thought of that. And there is an inverse portion to that, which is what I wanted to explain. I think that I have this respect for other religions and beliefs. I'm not going to get into specifics, but I recently started studying another religion that I thought that is one of the major world religions, that I was like, okay, we're going to get into this, and it's one of the big ones. So like, I need a good reason that I don't believe this. And then I like looked into it for like half an hour. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is so, like, I can't, like, it's like, it doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't have like it's very simple. It's like, it's some dude. It's just like, so many religions are just like some dude. They got a secret knowledge in the secret place that nobody else was there for. Nobody else saw, nobody else heard it. And so now some dude, he's going to go, and I like, that's a lot of the other religions, but ours has such like history and historicity, and like, it's such a part of even the world's culture. It is, one of the things that comes up in that book I've been reading, Kingdom of the Cults, one of the things that he says is that every cult and every other religion has to have they have to come up with their story for Jesus, like how they account for Jesus. They have to handle the Jesus question.
Right.
And why? Like, why is it such a challenging one with like other religions? I mean, this isn't a full answer. That's a simplistic, that is not going to convince anyone. But I just think it's a good place for us to realize that like, if that can be true for me, that assume that everybody has like thousands of years of history and eyewitness and those things, like, I like a really good case for it. So I assume that everybody else has that. Well, it makes sense that everybody would be like, no, that's what religions are, so I'm not going to take it seriously. Not like genuinely not knowing. I think that's probably a valid thing. Do you guys pick up what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. And I also feel like even these little tiny cults that pop up, like, I know Netflix recently had like for some reason they were like on a cult kick, and they were like documenting these different tiny little sects, right? And one of them, they were worshiping, like, it was some sort of like alien deity that these people were like in contact with, right? And they were referring to them as like Elohim. And I'm like, oh, well, the Bible explains that. Like, if you just actually read the Bible, like, that fits right in, and you would actually understand then what that actually is. And it has thousands of years of history. It's really not just some guy who made contact with this. Like, right. Just because you've never heard that word before, like, look at it in context in a biblical worldview, and your answer's there.
Right. And so people aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
There are so many of those. Like, one of my friends kept saying to me, like, remember where you came from, because I think that he really wanted me to like say like, yeah, all of the religions are all wonderful and like all those things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know the way that God is working in everybody's lives, and I have to keep remembering that. But I was saying to him, the very thing that you think is going to pull me back into your perspective is the very thing that brought me into Christianity. My history and what I've been through, all of my experiences, like, make sense when I come into the Christian perspective, like suddenly
Exactly, because
that
it
has
answers,
order.
yes, like it answers those questions. Because when you're putting all of these little things and you're picking and choosing from all different philosophies or whatever spiritual background, and it's like, okay, well, where did that come from, or what does that mean? Like, you start looking into it and it's empty, like there's nothing there, there's nothing at the bottom of it. But then you plug and play into a biblical worldview and you're like, well, shoot, like that
Right.
those questions are answered there, only there. It's the only place you're going to find it. And it's amazing because it's like, you know, whenever you're like, again, like I was raised Catholic, and the Bible was not like, they read it in church, but it was never like it wasn't stressed like you should read the Bible or you should study the Bible or whatever. But once you start doing that, it really does answer so many questions, and it clears so much up, and it gives you so much peace of mind. It's like, oh, there is an answer to this. Like, you're not free falling anymore. Like, there's something
It's not unknowable.
Yeah, it's like, and of course, like the mystery of God is huge, and obviously that's what we love to discuss, and that's what we're here, to talk about all the time. But like, there are real answers, like real solid answers, and it's not based on something that's 100 years old or even 1,000 years old. Like, this has been going on. People have written about this. Like, I want people to realize, because I didn't realize, like, the Bible is a library, and it's not a fake library. It's a real library of books from thousands of years ago. It spans continents and languages. It's not just one person or even 4 people who wrote this thing. Like, people have been writing about this for thousands of years.
And it's also not that they had one copy. Like, there are so many copies. I mean, I want to share one of the questions that is something you shared with me, Elise, that was one of the best explanations I've ever seen, is why the Bible is historically really why the Bible is what it is, why we can trust it, and why we don't trust other gospels that were found at different, like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Peter, those kinds of things. There's a really, really good, rational, like, obvious explanation when you ask it. It's just like, okay, so here's the thing about ancient Romans. Like, are you going to start there? Like, are you going to start? Actually, Wes Hoff did a really good job of that. That's your guy that you love to listen to. And so we'll share that in the show notes. But yeah, that's not something you can just address. And I want to, like, caveat something and be careful to say, like some of this sounds harsh and some of this might sound insulting to, like, other beliefs. Like, mostly we're talking to other Christians because we started it for this little group of gals, but it has surpassed that a little bit. We have 30 or 40 people who listen to this regularly. And like, they might be across all different faiths. And here's the thing. I actually do believe that your faith is probably true. It's probably real. Yeah, like, I think that you're not just talking to
nothing.
Nobody, to nothing. So that's the thing. I want to bring this home to a point that was I heard someone else say this. It's not my original words. I don't remember who it was. And it was that it's not, like, we look at all the religions of the world, like, there are a bunch of boutique religions. And I found the word boutique to be, like, masterful in that, because we treat it like that. They're like these little niche, they're the big ones. They're the big box religions. And then we have the mid-size, and then we have the boutique religions. And it's not, it seems like they're all so different. There's so much information. There are not 800. There are 2. This is so hard to say to people. Like, this sounds so cruel, but from my worldview, I'll put it that way. Christianity defines the world as the religion of God, of the one true God, and the religion of the serpents. And there is a spiritual reality that's going on around us. And I think that people on all sides acknowledge that. Like, we all pretty much know, like, within that space, we all acknowledge that there's a supernatural reality. Not all of us are going to acknowledge, like, that good is good and that, like, truth is true. Like, that's where you get that. Sometimes some of that's worldview. I highly recommend the systematic approach that C.S. Lewis takes in Mere Christianity, because he literally builds up from, do you think there's such a thing as truth? do you think there's such a thing as goodness, all the way to the Christ of the Bible. And it's systematic. And if you stop and pay attention, it's very well laid out. But I'll say more about that. I want to get into that, but I think that's an important place to start, is that there's just a space for your worldview, for each of those worldviews to be explained by the Christian worldview. And that's meaningless if you don't care. If you think Christians are stupid and deluded, then like that's, I don't blame you. I wouldn't. Why would you listen? Why would you care? But there's a lot of good, and if you're listening, maybe you want to hear a little bit more. So that's the way I look at it. I do. I'm like afraid to say that, but it's the truth. Like I can't.
Well, it's challenging. It's like, for people who don't believe in Christianity, it is a challenging thing to hear. So it's hard to say that out loud. Like I'm finding it hard. Like when my friend is saying like, what about where you came from? And I'm just like, well, I don't think that what I was doing was right. And so now I feel like things are making sense. I have more peace in my life. Like there's more order and there's more centeredness. And like, it's like, you can see also the joy that you were, as you were referring to before, it's like, you can see that there's a change happening for me. And that's because of me talking to God and then accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And it's because all of those little pieces, they have a home inside the biblical perspective. And so like, before I was even like coming back to Christianity, I was having a lot of trouble with the New Age perspective. I know we were just talking about other religions, but like in the New Age, I was like noticing how many people were taking ancient knowledge and then just pulling out like one or two sort of teachings, one or two little, not even a full teaching, just like a phrase. It was so incomplete that it was like, this isn't anchored in anything other than your own mind or like whatever you like. And then now you want to like create a whole life coaching, platform based on this one thing, but you don't have all the background stuff. And so I was getting really mad about that. And I was like, I need to find a way to talk about it. And I really struggled to like write it down and like get it into like a form that was more focused. And then it was like, as I came back to Christianity and started reading the Bible, I was like, oh my God, like all these things have an anchor point here actually. And there's a whole web of information around it that like helps contain it and give it life and all of those things. But I think when you just take the partial thing, then you're trying to create the web. You're trying to make a whole, like, it's like you're trying to like make a new religion almost. And it's,
well, aren't you like, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of the spiritualist stuff, the New Age stuff, it's really, it's like build your own religion. Like, I mean, that's just kind of what it's become.
Works.
And whatever works. That's such a big one, the whatever works thing. Okay, so I am thinking about this, like, it's something that came up in a conversation recently with the three of us. And it was about the fact that you can look back at your life and you can say like, I don't feel good about everything. Like not all that was right. Not all that was good. But also, we're also not saying that means everything in your life was evil. Like that's the other part here. Anything good that you have is still good. It's from God. So even if you had a good moment in the midst of something that was truly dark, it's because God was there with you too. Like the evil cannot create. It cannot create something good. It cannot give gifts. It cannot create virtues. It can pervert. It can rob. It can destroy. It can take away, and it can take these good things and twist them, but it can't make them. So you've had good things in your life. God has been with you. Like you are created and you are good. You're like, God created us and said it was good. So like, I want to be clear that we're not saying like hey, guess what? Your whole life you've been worshiping Satan and you suck. You might have been worshiping Satan, but you don't suck. Okay. Like that's all. That's just it. He's a deceiver. But Christ did his whole life to acknowledge he's a deceiver. It's so bad that you will not escape it without me. So I'm giving you an escape hatch, because you won't escape it without Christ. So don't feel bad that you can't escape it without Christ, because you were never meant to. No human will, not one.
Well, I mean, that is what's so interesting, because, and I think Caroline names this in her New Age Demons. I can't remember it as well, because I haven't read it in a while, but that even when somebody is not Christian, but they do like healing work, like they're in the spiritualism world, right? And they do these things, they know that the last line, like the last call of action, if they can't clear something awful, is to call Jesus Christ to help them. So even when they're not believers, they still know that Jesus is he's the end of the road. Like
he's the final boss. Like
yeah.
Do people think it's a magic trick? Like, I don't understand. What is the belief? Because I know this is in shamanism and Wicca. I mean, it's in so many things. What do they think?
They just think that he's like
a master of some type.
He's a master. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. He's a master. He was a teacher. He was a master of this thing, and that, like that. But I don't know why they don't want to associate him with God. He's separate.
So I mean, here's the thing to know about that for folks. If Jesus' name, so Jesus is God. So like, we will say God a lot of times, but they are one and the same. They are separate, but they're also the same. That there's some mystery for you. We still have mystery here. We still got weird stuff. But we have this, Jesus, if he has all authority over all other entities, that's not like right there. That should be a hint that, like, I think that people know anytime in any kind of spiritualism how like legalistic spiritual things are. How like some people joke about this, about like it's in literature about the fae, how like you have to be so careful not to make deals, because you're making deals when you don't know it. And I think that's such a great example for we'll call it like ethically agnostic creatures of any kind, right? Like free will, really powerful, but not God. That's already dangerous. And you're making like it's very real. People understand that there's a transactional legalistic nature to it, understand that there's a hierarchy of authority. Like, am I wrong? But I feel like those two things are fairly present.
I think that's exactly right. And it's the transaction thing. You understand when you start getting into this, you understand that you are bartering, you're making deals, whether it's physical or, you're praying, or you have offerings or an altar of some type. Like you're doing something for something.
Okay.
So,
and if we know,
if you know that there's something involved that you don't quite understand, it's the weird like cognitive dissonance of like, well, Jesus isn't like part of that for some reason. I don't know what that is.
That has to be an entry point.
Say, Elise, how you will be like, the Bible is like weird enough. It is supernatural enough. Like, and I think
once you read it, like if you start reading it, it's so weird. Like it's so strange. and that's I want people who are just like, just even spiritual at all. It's like, read holy texts of all kinds and read the Bible. It's weird enough. Like, it's not this like fluffy, empty platitudes. Like, it's not, that's
right.
not it. It's like, it's big and involved and in depth, and you start getting into it and you're like, okay, I don't need other spiritual things, because this is going to keep me busy for a long time.
I listened to an interview with Michael Heiser, and he said, he's your fave.
My fave.
He said something like, if you are not reading the Bible through the lens of the supernatural, like it's almost like you're not getting it.
You're not.
And it's like, and so we do know that a lot of Christianity actually does kind of shy away from the supernatural. They don't want to highlight it too much, and they want to keep it, like, I guess, more relatable. I don't know what it is that their goal is, but they are missing. I feel like they're missing, like, actually capturing people's attention. Like, it is interesting to delve into mysteries and like all of that. And it's definitely a lot more interesting to do it under God, because it's safe. You know what I
It's
mean? Like,
safe, right? Yeah.
like I've done it when it's not under God, and I can tell you I've had a lot of evil like encounters and entity attacks and all of those kinds of things. And so I think people really haven't looked at the Bible, like really haven't. I grew up
Right.
Catholic, and just like you, Elise, like it was not really highlighted. It
No.
wasn't, I didn't read the Bible. I wasn't really that encouraged to read the Bible. It was like,
No.
just go to your priest and just go to church. It was like not, and it's like actually getting into it is a whole other undertaking, and it is fascinating, and it's way more like, I want to say also like inclusive than people think it is.
Oh, 100%. That's one of the things.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
I want to, at least after you say this, I want to know what you mean by inclusive, Kristin.
No, go ahead, because I was gonna probably give you a whole other idea. So
Okay.
I just mean that like it's the ideas that you think are not under God, like these,
Oh, yeah.
like even the channeling or doing healing or light language, like all of this stuff that people like, I mean, and also what you said before, Elizabeth, which I'm less aware of and less like educated on, which is how these other religions also have a place, like there's a way to look at them through the Christian lens. It's like if I'm hearing that from you, and then I'm also thinking about like channeling, guys, like you can do it through the Holy Spirit, where you're actually safe and you're actually like talking to God versus being with some other random being. Like talking about transactions and things, I was following this woman who was doing what do they call it? Divining, channeling. And it was channeling these little people, and like, you know, they're not leprechauns, they're from a different place, but you know, that kind of thing where it's like elemental beings is how they're kind of referred to. And when you do that, you have to give offerings. And I remember thinking like there's something about this that makes me feel really uncomfortable, that I have to give them. I mean, it was like honey and maybe tobacco and salt and candles and whatever. Like it wasn't like these major things to give up. But I was convinced at a certain point that was like, not totally, but I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. Like you're sacrificing something, and you're also giving them something material so that these non-material beings have something to like connect to in order to be able to. But I hated it. And I was like, I don't feel right that I have to keep paying them, you know, in this way. And sometimes during the session, you have to pay them more. And like, it was just like, I had encounters with my own beings that were not, but they didn't require any of that. They just wanted acknowledgement. That was it. It was like, just talk to them. But it was like not, and it wasn't like a demand. These ones had like a demand. They had more of that Fae energy where it was like mischievous a little bit and like that kind of thing. And then, you know, I was fascinated. I was like, oh, all these mysteries and this hidden knowledge and like, and it, like I loved it until I started getting more and more like entity attacks and like having to encounter things that, you know, it seemed to me inescapable being around the elemental beings. And I was like, there's something wrong here. But I wasn't like, I still wasn't Christian. I still wasn't like ready to like give it up or whatever. But it's like now I'm like looking at things going like, okay, light language, guys, like this is the Holy Spirit speaking in tongues if you choose to actually connect to the Holy Spirit versus some other random thing. Like you can connect with mysteries and you can have all of these experiences through God. And I think that like people not wanting to name God and call things the universe and like keep moving away from that, I'm like, you're gonna move yourself further away and you don't realize it.
Yeah. And there is some sort of, it's like an ignorance, and I think it's pride maybe a little bit, but you have people like, take a very secular person who will do like a psychedelic trip and see the same things over and over, see these beings over and over and over. And it's like, okay, I know they're real. They're right on the other side of this very thin veil that I can get to them. But the notion of God is like completely inconceivable for some reason. Like I can't, like none of that doesn't track, but like these things do. I can see them. I know that they're real, and you're not connecting the two. Like this place exists, it does exist, and it does have a creator, and it does have hierarchy,
Right.
an order.
Yeah, the hierarchy is a thing, I think, for people to reckon with. I think people don't want that. They don't
Yeah.
they don't think they want that. And then also there's like the toxic positivity kind of movement too, of like everything's beneficial. It's all God, and like if there's anything negative, it's because you created it. It's because your mind is like, you have to do some mind work, and you have a trauma that you need to work out. And like,
I mean, it's the same as the totally depraved. It's like, it just is the same. Like that's so sad. What if I wanted to offer a way, like I want to talk about how this can fit into the Christian worldview. So like, I think that's a good place to start. So some of these experiences, like let's take ayahuasca, because that is one that like, there's a fairly not uniform, but a somewhat uniform experience folks have. So, now it's spiritual. It can be, a lot of people have a specific, there's a spirit of ayahuasca that I know a lot of people specifically see that is one similar thing. But Kristin, I don't think that came up in your account, like the spirit of ayahuasca specifically.
oh,
That was
I've
like a
seen,
serpent.
I did see her. I've done it like 9 times. So like,
Okay.
I have seen her. I've seen the snake as well. And
Snake and
dance.
her are probably one
They
thing.
are, I mean, yeah, but they're like different
Manifestations.
there's different visions. It's like there's a
Okay.
like female eyes often,
I've
or
heard-
there's
yeah,
a snake.
Yeah.
They can kind of merge and all those things, but it's like, yeah.
So this is such a great example, because very often, and I'm not sure who, but I just was hearing an account from another religion of like these ancient goddesses. It's like Isis, it's around that time, but that so many of the female goddesses, really the very chaotic ones, were serpent. They were serpent, was their other form, like across religions. And so the interesting thing about that, this is where I want to connect it to the Christian worldview. There is, if this shows up with ayahuasca and it shows up in these other religions that are Canaanite religions, that are anciently set against the Judaism, you know, in the old world, and then now against Christianity. And there were things that required sacrifices, human sacrifice, like a lot. And there's so much consistency that, like, I believe people. First of all, I believe you. If you saw that, I 100% believe you.
Yeah.
There's space for that, in that that is a demon. Like, it's not really hard to work this into our worldview. You can call it, like, there are like different names of these things. You can say fallen angel or demon or spirit of the air. It doesn't really matter. That part's kind of semantics for our purposes today. But ultimately, that asks something of you. God doesn't need anything from you. I want to be very clear. God will never ask you to give him anything, because he needs nothing except you. He just wants you, and that's because he wants you, not because he needs you. But he will never ask for, like, he's not going to send a spirit to you that's going to be like, give me some honey, or give me your firstborn, or if it's not God, don't do it. Like, that's
Right.
not how it works today. But there is absolutely a space in that. And that is one that also responds to the name of Christ. It responds to calling out to Jesus. We know this firsthand, right? We know this, or secondhand, we know this from stories. And it responds to that. And why would it respond to the name of Jesus? And why would it let up? Why is it so consistent? And it also fits with like the world view of Christianity, that we have a populated world with deceiving spirits that are bad, that want to interact with you, and because they want our energy, our attention, our love, our stuff. Really what they want is our belief. They want our faith, ultimately, because you can't serve two masters. You can't serve the serpent and God. And a lot of us are serving serving no one, like, except ourselves, or just no one. A lot of people aren't even self-serving. But really, it comes down to, like, but they're also not serving God. But if you're serving another entity, that is directly in opposition to God. So like that fits into the worldview that's maybe overly simplistic, but it's so simple how it fits in. Obviously, we also have like an explanation for Judaism. Like that's another big one. Like the Old Testament, we share our original texts. They have these prophecies that a Messiah is coming. We believe that those prophecies have been fulfilled, and then he gave us more stuff. They don't yet. So again, it all fits. Like this is still fits in the same story. But the serpent goddesses fit in the Jewish story as well, because those are spirits and entities that ancient Jews came up against. And by the way, that were only able to win, you know, in a literal battle of the gods, could not recreate what God could do, could not do what God could do. And so like this is not a new story. It's a story as old as time. And it all fits. Like I mean that might not, like that alone may not like be enough, but we could do this with every single one. And we should go through it. But so again, it just makes space for it. One of the things that Jesus does is frees you from those things. Like he's not telling you, like, it's not to like keep you from it. He's not like, don't do that anymore. Like, you know, stop it. I want you. Yes, he wants you. Yes, he's jealous, but he's freeing you from, he's saying you don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to go to them for help because I will help you. You don't have to give them anything because I will give you everything. You know, there is a direct opposition to Christ in that, but the good thing is that he means the opposite. So it is total freedom. And I don't know if that comes across, but it's like all these other entities want you. They want a piece of you. They want to own you. They want to latch onto you. They want your stuff, your time, your attention. And Christ is literally the only thing that can free you from all of that.
Not only that, those things will actually convince you to do things that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily do, that would go against your own conscience or your own morals, like, and tell you it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're developing in some kind of way. And so
can you give like an example or something?
Yeah. There was an experience that I had where I was unknowingly connected to something that wasn't benevolent, or hearing, let me say, like I was like hearing something that wasn't benevolent. And it was telling me things to tell to this person that I was like spending time with, and then like encouraging like a relationship with this person, but this person wasn't available. And so there was like this, there was this push to like, no, this is important because it's like something like, you know, galactic or whatever. And
like encouraging you to kind of force, like wedge your way in, because it's ultimately like, oh, I was supposed to be with that person, or
yeah, I'm supposed to do this. This is like it's something beyond us.
Okay.
Oh wow.
You know, but it's like not, it's not God. It's like
God. And another thing, God will never ask you to do that. A creature of God and God himself will never ask you to do something that violates his rules. So that's one thing we always can check it too. Like we can double check. The Bible tells you to test the spirits, but like there is a test for everything in Christianity. We don't have to take anything and just be like, that's probably fine. Like we actually can test those things. If it's telling you to do something that disagrees with what is good and true and beautiful in the Bible, like it's not God. It's just not. And because he won't. But it's like, so it's safety in that. But I didn't really realize that it was that pronounced. At least you nodded, like you were like, yeah. Like do you know of the like stuff about this too? Other examples?
Just now, I sneezed.
Yeah. Oh, I meant like before that, but I thought maybe you had something like that you had an example of like
no
this sort of thing too, because it's okay.
But I did want to ask, did in all of your experiences with whatever you want to call them, entities, whatever, did you ever learn like names, or were you ever like given any sort of,
Is that a thing?
yeah, like information that way, like, oh, this is who I am, or
So
well,
scary.
the people. So when I was following the woman who did the divining, like she would give me, like I knew the name of those beings, they gave her their name, and they're very well
That's
known.
wild.
So they've given their name, for, this. Well, I guess they're like that's why I liken them to like leprechauns. It's like
Yeah.
they're little people beings, and so the name of them is Contemple in Burkina Faso. And so like there are little people beings all over the world that all of the indigenous cultures seem to have names for. And so in
So it's like
that
a
way,
species of some type.
yeah, well, yeah, and they're all related. Like all the little beings are like related. From the little bit that I learned, but yeah, and then I was having one-on-one sessions with this woman, and yeah, there was like all kinds of things that were said to me. They told me that my name wasn't really Kristin, right? And that
Oh,
I had a different name, and but they couldn't also say the name, but the name, they could tell me what the meaning of the name was.
well,
And
that's
so
super scary.
there was a
Sorry,
lot of
guys,
like,
I'm moving around. If you couldn't tell, my phone was dying up in the attic. I didn't intend to leave this on the phone. I had to come all the way down from the attic.
That's
So
all
pardon
right.
me, three floors, a couple of things.
all
Sorry.
good. Yeah,
That is,
they gave me, I mean, it was fascinating. The things they would tell me were fascinating. Like,
well, I'm
absolutely. Like
sure.
there was a conversation about DNA once where they were like telling me that there was a lie in the DNA, and I was in like of people, and that like I somehow had a way of like cracking the code on that, and so it was like
Oh,
it's like, oh my God, so there was also the specialness piece too, right?
Yeah,
Like there,
I think
right.
I was gonna say it probably makes people feel like, okay, I really have a purpose. I'm really important. And I'm an
yes.
important key in this entire thing. And like I have this piece of information that nobody else knows, or it's like a very select maybe group of people that know this. And so then it just kind of inflates your ego, and then it keeps you coming back too for more information. It's like, oh, what am I supposed to do next? And what else can I do? Or how can I do this?
Yeah, and this is
That's
still one of
really
my
interesting.
downfalls is like the self, like
Yeah.
the glorifying of the self, or
Yeah.
the even just over interest in the self, right? And so like I'm super guilty of that, and that was like they preyed on that and fed that like so well, That's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's one that Christianity doesn't do that. That's one
yeah,
thing that it's not I mean, it fulfills the, like, we all know that we are like unbelievably, insurmountably, overwhelmingly loved by God. But that after that, like, we're just not that, we're not more special than we're so special. We're the most special babies in the whole world. And we're equally the most special babies in the whole world with everyone else. So it's like,
right. And also but what they would give you, I would say, in return, that would maybe, it doesn't necessarily satisfy the self in the same way, but you're like, there are like spiritual gifts
Yeah.
well, yeah,
that like a church or a pastor or whatever can help you identify. So then, but the purpose of that is to then go use it in service, right? Not in service of
right.
you, but in service of others in the name of God. And so it's
Yeah.
like, there is a little bit of a trade. Like, I think sometimes I want to point that out for like non-Christians, that it's like you're not just losing everything. Like those things had some like kernel of truth in them.
Yeah.
They just have a greater like context in the Christian worldview and in the biblical.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a bad thing. It sounds like it, but less self isn't actually bad. I think it goes against a lot of what we like think socially. Christianity is not a meritocracy. And that's like hard for like on both ends. Like that can be hard for I don't know, that's a tough one. On the other hand, God does grant us the spiritual gifts and also natural gifts, like your natural things that you were born good at, that are like, you're just a really good dancer, or you're a really good, like, whatever. Those are also gifts that are from God. Like he gave you those too. I mean, I think there's freedom in being like, ideally, and there is once Christ works on you, but there's freedom in like not being the answer to everything and not being all of everything all the time. Like, not being the center of your own universe has to be freeing. I don't know. It sounds exhausting. It sounds exhausting to me to have to decide what, like, spiritually. Okay, I have a question. What if you do it wrong in, like, the spiritualist worldview, New Age worldview? What happens to you when you die? Like, there's no hell. What happens to you when you die? Is it just whatever you want?
You reincarnate.
Yeah,
Pretty much across the board.
Usually,
So if you're like
I think so.
evil,
like
an
karma.
evil person,
Karma is
so
what
karma.
happens.
Okay.
Yeah, if
So,
you're evil, I think you come back as like a cockroach or something, like a stone. Seriously, like I think sometimes they literally think you can come back.
no, so that I
Yeah,
know
some
that
people
in
think
the, like,
that, yeah.
in not, I don't know if it's in Kundalini yoga in general, but in the Kundalini yoga cult, the cockroach is like one of their big threats, that you will come back as a cockroach. And, like, there's a very specific, like, sort of spiritual sin within that. I think it's against their guru. I think it's
Oh.
Bhajan, but Yogi Bhajan, I think, possibly, that will cause you to become. I listened to a woman who had left it, who talked about the anxiety that cockroaches gave her because of that specifically.
Sure.
I'm that sounds really scary too. Like, I'm like, that doesn't sound like less scary to
Well,
me.
Also, though, like, if you're doing it wrong, it's all your fault. Like, everything is you're responsible for everything that happens. So
Yeah.
even if that is the worst atrocity that you could possibly think of, like, you're responsible for it. Like, that's part of the worldview of a lot of spiritualism, is like, it's a mirror for you. You created it. Like, like, it's
All right. That I'm getting.
it's
Okay.
very unforgiving, I feel. And
Yeah, because everything is
yeah.
counted. Everything is counted against you.
Yeah, and
So
like,
maybe this is a great. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say that the unconscious or the subconscious is at play, right? Like, and people do have real traumas or whatever is going on that, like, they can't control, and all of those kinds of things. And, like, I would say the worst offenders of the spiritualist movement would be, like, basically just causing more harm, right? Like, just adding on more layers of pain to themselves and to others. And that's what I started to get really mad about. That was when I started to go, okay, there's some little kernel of truth that they've now, like, just made the whole thing, and then doesn't have, like, a background context. It's incomplete, and then it's like it's causing harm and pain, and they think that it's empowering.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, go ahead, Elizabeth. Go ahead.
No, I want to know. Say what you were going to say, because I have more. Now I have more questions. So keep talking.
I was just gonna say it keeps you then in a cycle of selfishness, because it's like you don't want to extend yourself, because God forbid that this person says something to, like, offend you or, like, give you more trauma, and then you have to clear that. Or you don't want to overextend because it's like too much of your energy is, like, going towards that negativity, and it just keeps you in this, like, very selfish, like, okay, this is what's good for me right now and this is what I need, versus, again, like, the opposite. Like, literally,
Okay.
the Christian worldview is to die to yourself every single day and love your neighbor. Like, that's, like, love your neighbor, not yourself at all. Like,
here's why these both can't be true.
Right, but it's also
both
all
be
about
true when they're
relationship.
diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that right there is a really good answer.
It's all about relationships. So for me, one of the things also was, like, that worldview of the spiritualist worldview is, like, it's very much about the self, in the way that you're also individualizing, and you're so independent and so hyper independent that you're not supposed to need anyone else, right?
Yes.
Like, and that like, there's something wrong with you if you have feelings about whatever that person said. That's your problem. That's your thing that you have to clear. And there's never, like, a reality of, like, a meeting place in the middle. It's like there is, each relationship, I'm like, how do you not see? Like every person you meet, there's like a different flavor of like relating that's going on.
Yeah.
There's a space between. There's something that gets created between the two of you, but you're going to pretend that like anything that happens is really just this individual, and that there isn't like actually a connection. And it's so
This feels so
dehumanizing.
legalistic to me, and I don't understand. I never thought of this as legalistic, like in that way. I just never made that connection. And this is also legalistic. It's so performance based. Like this is really blowing my mind. So the opposite worldview, and like at least what you said, like it's dying to self. Like that's what we're called to do, is die to self. Our main like Christians, like modern Christians today in the new covenant. So after Jesus came, he said, like, all the commandments are still important. They're still good. But he said, I have two that are better, that are more important. They contain everything. They are love God with all your, heart and all your mind and all your soul and all your strength, and love your neighbors as yourself. It is literally like, which doesn't mean don't love yourself. You are supposed to care for yourself. God created you, and you are good, just like he created your neighbor, and they are good.
And I think he knows that ultimately, like, love your neighbor as yourself, because you're going to love yourself. Like,
right.
You're going to focus on you. So focus that on somebody else.
And he built, like, let's be real, he built that into us, because what we have an imperative to survive. Yeah. And that causes us to do things that are enough self-serving to survive. He created that. He built that into us. Now, part of that is so to create relationship, because one of the things that I love about our God, being a triune God, is relationship is baked into the foundation. So we believe that the only thing that God always existed, the only thing that always existed was God. And that includes Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Jesus wasn't a human being yet. Human beings weren't a thing yet. Although that's acting like time isn't happening all at once for God, which I don't think is the case. But anyway, for us right now, that's not the case. That predates everything. And it is one God that is three in relationship, that makes one. Like, it is the core, the way the God interacts with himself is literally modeling like everything is based on this relationship. We were never meant to be alone, like, just ever. And that, so like, these things are so diametrically opposed that it makes sense why it's all making sense to me now. Like, I'm hearing this. I guess I didn't know this, and I've been a part of this world, but more in the like wellness, heal yourself. Like, it's all been towards health, because you have chronic health things, and it's so tempting to be like,
yeah,
I don't know, maybe it's my chakras. Like, let's cleanse that. Like, I don't because people tell you it's that, and you have to fix it. That can creep into Christianity too. So I will call out, Christians can do this, like, you brought it on yourself. God helps those who help themselves. That's not in the Bible, just FYI. Yeah. And prosperity gospel is like, being good will attract more. That's not right. So it does creep into that too. But Christianity in its purest form, as it's meant to be, is like the way that Christ told us, does not include that.
Yeah,
that blows my mind.
That just made me think about the in the Bible, it'll say like, act as if, like, to be virtuous, like to be more, courageous, or to be more kind, and all those things. Like, act as if you have it in you to do that, and it will become, like you will become that. And I think that's like another one that got co-opted into like manifestation, and like, like it got pulled into all of that other language that, in and of itself isn't that much of a problem, but because it now has all of this sort of extra energy around it, it just doesn't feel right to me. How people talk about manifestation, it's like fake it till you make it. You just got to be the thing, and then you'll have the thing. And it's often about having a mansion, or it's about having like the 7-figure salary. And it's like, it's so much about success. And not so much about like actual.
You mean nobody ever tried to manifest being gentle and lowly?
Yeah, being kind.
I would like to manifest being gentle and lowly like Christ.
I manifest that every day, but
make me like Christ. I'm like, it comes from like, there's also this like act like a thing, like the fake, well, sure, act like a good person. Like it's like the Dwight Schrute thing. It's like, I think, what would a stupid person do? And I do not do that thing. That is what it's talking about when we say like just do like you. It's in psycho-cybernetics. This is not what they say, but this is how I summarize it. They gave a bunch of people in an asylum of some sort. I'm like probably just saying this totally wrong, but a test, and they said like these were truly crazy people, and they're like, hey, take this test. And they answered it, and they're like, yep, you guys are crazy. And then they said, answer it like you're sane. Answer it like a sane person would answer it. And guess what? Their answers were indistinguishable from a sane person.
Yeah.
Because they know what they're, so what they did to rehabilitate people was like, well, you know what a sane person would do? Do that. Like, do that thing, and it freaking works. Like, now there's more to it. It probably didn't change everything about them. It didn't but they could do it. And I know I mask. I like act like what would a normal person do in this situation? I'm not always right about what a normal person would do.
Remind me of this conversation. I have something for the group chat to say.
Oh, ooh, I'm good. That's good. Okay, I'm gonna remember that. So like that's what it means. It doesn't mean like act like it and you will magically, mystically become it. I think
in Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis talks about this too. Like, just start doing the things and you will become more Christ-like.
And that's, but I think you also need to ask Christ for help. Like it's again, it's still in relationship. It's not like, oh, okay, yes, I'm going to be like him, but I'll just do it on my own over here.
My way. Yeah.
In fact, it's sinful to do that. To be like, I am going to white knuckle my way through this. I'm going to be so good at this. Yeah. Because that's like, I mean, that's my way. Don't get me wrong. Like, to talk about my sin, like, you're calling me out, but like, I'm going to brute force this, like, into goodness. And it works. Like, I've done a fair amount of that. But like that led to like new legalism and new problems. It did not lead to like God was like, getting there, but like, let's keep going. We're not quite there until you can just be like, yeah, you're going to have to do this. And now I am not kidding you. I literally am like, God, I can't be a mom today. I can't do much. Like, give me what I need to be exactly what I have to do. Like, just like, I literally won't do it unless you make me do it today, because I can't, like, emotionally or mentally. It doesn't really matter what it is. So it's even like that. It's like that much. I mean, it's to the point where now I think I pray like, God's probably like, okay, take a breath, honey. I'm like, no, I'm sure he's not, but I'm like, oh, this jar, I can't open it. Like, gotta do it. And it's like, cool. Like I mean, a lot of times God opens a lot of jars by like having my husband walk in the room. Don't get me wrong. Like, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just all day long. He will is the thing. He will develop those things. Just like you said, like, just go to God, ask God. Like, you don't have to go, like, for the folks that are just wondering, if you ask God to show himself to you, he'll do that too.
I mean, that's what
you don't have to be a Christian to ask that question.
No, that's the thing is like, don't try to work out your feelings about Jesus. Like, like, just talk to God. Just start there. Like, if you're unsure, if you feel a little lost, if you feel a little confused, offer it up to God. Like, I need help with this because I don't understand what's going on, or I don't know. Like, are you real? Like, is what I'm doing okay? Like, am I talking to like, am I talking to angels? Or am I talking to demons? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking like Doreen Virtue, for instance, like with her angel cards, right? And she's now saved, but one of my friends was like, yeah, I don't know why she thought, what the problem was, why she decided to like, convert. And I was like, well, you can watch her testimony. She's on YouTube. And I was like, it's because she wasn't talking to angels. She was talking to demons. And she says that.
That's crazy.
What were you saying, Elise?
I said, send me that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Her podcast is insane.
I love it.
It's like,
what is
I think it's like, is it Ex Psychic Saved? There are so many Ex Psychic
Oh, that's right. I
podcasts.
have her. She's fantastic.
I think it's that one.
If it's the
Yeah,
same link,
she's really good.
Yeah, she's great.
So that gal that just went on Caroline's podcast, the most recent one, is also, she also is on a podcast with Doreen Virtue now. And so that's over at Problematic Podcast, which I'll also link. That was a really, really good one, by the way. I want to talk about the path from like the occult to Christianity. Like, that's another way to answer these questions. That's such a great thing for folks to listen to. If you're curious about specifically Kristin's journey, or like any of the women in this group out of New Age, like, listen to these testimonies of people who left New Age and became Christians. The thing is, you can always leave on the table what you don't like. You don't have to like take it all in and do it, but like, watch it. Hear from them. Hear from people who've lived both about like what it meant to them, and like what the change was and what they saw. That's something about, like, we can share a bunch of those, but at the very least, get the information from folks who've lived both of those things.
Right.
Because there's so much that can be summarized in those.
I think there's also maybe
I don't know.
idea of like hearing those things, allowing there to just be incremental pieces of information that means something to you. You don't need to adopt Christianity off the bat. Like, for me, I'm like, just get to God at the very, just like talk to God. And maybe he was going to lead you to Christianity, and maybe he has other plans for you. I don't know. But like, I just think that there's an idea, I think maybe also because there's so much of that, you just grab one little piece of teaching and you run with it.
Yeah.
That almost like you should be able to just have all of it right away, like in terms of like, you know, biblical understanding and the like who God is, and like all of the, like, have all your feelings worked out and all the things. And it's just like, it is a process, people. Like, you know, I'm still piecing my process together. It's like, I started talking to God, but actually maybe even before that, I learned about a healing that was called the Christ point. And then, you know, like, for people who were offended by the word Christ, he called it the middle point. And it's a very, very short thing that you do with someone. And I had my homeopath did it on me. And then I was like completely amazed. And that was probably the beginning. Like, that was because I invited Christ in. Like,
yeah, you gave him, this is the funny thing, you gave him permission, and you were like, this is where I'm talking about spirits are like, they'll listen, Christ is included in that. You give him permission. He's like, yeah, baby, you didn't know what you were doing, but you did it, and it's good.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, I love that he'll work his way into anything, but that's why it's also like, I'm not afraid. I have no fear of telling a person, just ask God to show you. Just ask God to show you. Like, I'm not to say it's never overnight. Sometimes it's like a flash of lightning. Sometimes it's like a download in your brain. Like, it really is for some people. They just see this and it's the truth and it opens their eyes. But some people, it's literally 30 years of stuff that builds up in them. Or 30 years of stuff and then a flash of lightning. Like, it's just, there are lots of different ways about it. But like, you don't have to take our word for it ever, because you can just ask God to illuminate this for you, and he will. And if you're curious about Jesus, you can ask him to tell you about Jesus too. And like, you really, like, it's so hard to explain that you will get something, but like, I'm certain that you will. Like, I'm certain. Is that too much to say?
No, and but I also think that, like, coming back to the supernatural conversation, like, I think if people are already kind of geared towards that in life in general, like, I just want to say that, like, there are podcasts that actually are that, you know, like they are, that is their entry point. And they have the background of Christianity, and it's like, it can be really fascinating. And so, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that for years. I don't know. I mean, I definitely wasn't seeking Christianity in any kind of conscious way.
What were you seeking?
So yeah, on that note, like when you were talking, you said something earlier where I was like, oh, you said something like, it just feels like endless. Like what goes on? And I'm like, yeah, there's this endless seeking feeling where it's like, I was seeking truth. I was seeking like home feeling, like an anchored feeling. Um, Definitely I thought it was self though. Like I thought I needed to understand myself more. I needed to like do, shift something in myself so that I could actually have all of that stability. Like I was looking for stability as well, like because I felt like things were very like rocky. Um, actually for a long time I was like, the only constant is not change. Like that is such a lie. Like why does everybody say that? Like the only constant is God. And so it was like there's just yeah, the seeking was like I was just very like dissatisfied. I was like, there's more to life than what I'm looking at and what people are saying, what people talk about. And like, I know that there's more. And then there's also the just like the kind of bend in my brain where I'm like, I want the mystery and I want like, it was like, I'm going to find the hidden knowledge and I'm going to work out like things about the universe that no one has ever figured out before, like all of those kinds of things. But I think in the end, because I was having so many spiritual attacks, like so many entities, situations, and I was asking for help everywhere, like talking to all different healers and seers and like all these people. And I really just wanted peace. Like I was like, I don't want to be in this battle anymore. Like I don't know what I don't know what I opened. I don't know why this is like this. Some people say it's because I'm so good. Things are trying to attack me. And other people are like, there's something wrong with you. You've created this. Why are you calling this in? Like all that. Why can't you clear it yourself? It was like all of this kind of stuff.
Whatever it is, it's your fault.
Yeah.
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 Good or bad.
How about you? What were you looking for? Like what were you seeking that sent you back to God, to this God, to our God?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you cut out.
Elise. That Elise. Sorry, I know. I'm sorry. It's really,
No,
I think I'm still cutting out pretty bad.
I think I was just disenchanted with the world at this specific time. Like this was all during 2020 and we won't get into it, but I had a very like it was like just a very normal worldview where my trust was in all of these man-made things and institutions, and I trusted people who were smart and knew more and they knew what they were talking about, and then it just seemed like that was being like chipped away, and my trust in a lot of things it was just disintegrating. And I thought I had this big moment of like, what is my faith in? Like if you don't even trust your eyes, like if you don't trust what you're seeing on TV, if you don't trust what you're seeing in general, like then what is your faith in? And I just had a big, like a literal come to Jesus moment, because I thought, well, if I don't trust any of this, I gotta figure it out. I gotta figure out what my faith is in. And yeah, it was just kind of a rediscovering, because like I said, I've always believed in God. I've always believed in the supernatural. I mean, that was a really big part of, truly, like it was a big part of my life. Like the supernatural was always a big part of my, just even like culturally and whatever. And so that was not a problem. Like that's not a barrier for me. But yeah, it was like for some reason Jesus was like the missing link. And I don't know why, because I was, like I said, I was raised Catholic. Like I went to church, I did the things, but for some reason it was like he was just I mean, it's not like I didn't learn about him or whatever, but it's like something clicked after my faith was disintegrated completely. I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And yeah, it was like but it was like a moment.
Okay.
Like you said, it was just like a,
So it was all the time and then a moment. So Jesus is, I think why Jesus is so hard to get into for some people is because he's a linchpin. Like you can believe in God and a lot of stuff without totally disrupting your whole worldview. But like Jesus is going to radically disrupt your life and the way you do things. So like I can see why having resistance to that. Like that's big. I that what something that occurred to me, both of you were talking about truth and like trust. Like what do you trust when like everything is your best guess and it's like there's a mystery and there's like where do you rest your head?
Right.
I and that sounds so exhausting and unsafe. And I think I've like had my interest and dabbled and stuff, but like I've always had that place to rest my head. I'm just gonna have to give the story at some point. And until like a couple years ago when I had my big like, I'm like yelling at my husband, like, tell me why, like, tell me how this works. Make this make sense to me. So I've had that like for sure. But what we have in the Bible is like actually a document that you can trust. It's not to say that it's, translated perfectly, it's been managed perfectly, but it is authoritative and you can trust it. And there are really good reasons. And again, I'll share that. Like I there are lots of reasons that I believe you can trust it, that are practical. These are not head in the sand reasons. These are like historical, reasonable reasons. Of course, you have to take the leap of faith that any of this happened in the world, like at all. But like enough, I don't care about that. I believe that part. But like the Bible's trust. So why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't the world be conspiring? Most often, is the Bible true? Like, can you really trust that? Is this one the right gospel or is that one? Like, of course, that's going to be the thing that is undermined and attacked, because that is the only place that like we have that we can go and be like, I know this is true. I know this is safe. Like, I know it. And so really what we're not, that no one wants us to have, like, nothing evil, nothing bad wants us to have a place to lay our head. Just doesn't. Like, there is no rest for us in that world. And like, so why not want to undermine that? So like, I think at the basis of all this, we have to believe God is good, but we also have to know, like, we know God is good because of the Bible. So we have to know that like we can trust and rest in the Bible and that it's safe and it's true and it's real, and it can be interpreted so differently, but like the end result is the same. Like, even if you interpret it, it doesn't matter if you think Genesis is a theological narrative that is telling us how God, like there's that, or it's like a literally science book, biology, this is how God did it. Like, literally doesn't matter in the end. Like, what we did is like, it's still true. Like, that part is true. Like the truths, the underlying truths of the Bible are true and we can trust them. And so I don't know, it just feels like if we're seeking, there is a result to seek, but we like have to get past that. So I don't know. I think that's one thing to address. If you're curious at like the next level of like, but is this worth looking into? Like, just listen to something about why Christians do believe that the Bible is the Bible. Like, not like, ask Christians, ask people who believe this, who've studied this, who've made it their life work, and who've not like read articles on Reddit or read things on Reddit about it. Or just heard about it on Joe Rogan or whatever, like, did you guys,
Elise, do you remember? Can I ask, Elise, do you remember, like, was there a specific moment where you were like, okay, the Bible is true? Because there's like the moment of like turning to Jesus, but was there a different moment for you with the Bible?
Yes. And I don't know the exact moment or the exact sermon, because it was a sermon, but I will always shout them out because I can tell you they helped me out during the pandemic whenever you needed letters from church authority to get out of certain mandates. Apologia Church, Jeff Durbin, he is a Calvinist. I always preface that because I know people are very, very, one way or another. And if you don't know what a Calvinist is, then ignore it completely. But
don't worry about it.
I get it.
We're not like Calvinists.
Yeah.
But we like them.
But we do. Listen, they know their Bibles inside and out. And that's where I don't even know how I came across him, to be honest with you. I feel like
he is great.
He was put on my feed like for a reason, and
the God algorithm.
It's so true. No, it's so, so true. And there are, there's certain sermons that I thought, this guy knows what he's talking about, right? And so I just kept listening and I just kept watching, and it was somewhere in there. It was somewhere in a sermon, which is bizarre because my neighbor's like flashing his lights directly at me. That's weird. Sorry, but you can cut that part.
Yeah. Nope. Leave it in it.
Yeah. Yeah, nope. But yeah, it was somewhere in a sermon, which is like strange because I don't know. I would have thought that it would have been something other than that, but it was definitely him. And then from there I came across it was Wesley Huff was on their podcast. They have a podcast, and he's the scholar. He's the New Testament scholar, and he goes into the actual history of the Bible, and that's the thing that I need. Like, I need the facts. I need that part of it, because just because I feel something, like, I don't trust my feelings because I'm very erratic and expressive and emotional, so I don't trust my feelings, usually, honestly, with anything. So I do need the facts. I do need to like hear it from good sources. But anyway, Wesley Huff was a guest on their podcast, that church's podcast, and then from there I went from Wesley Huff, and then I got into like actually reading it, going through and like reading the Bible. And I will also shout out Athey Creek. They're in, I think, Portland, Oregon. And there's a pastor there who goes through the Bible literally like line by line, verse by verse. And he's like this big, jolly, like Santa Claus looking man. And he really helped me understand it, because like I said this a million times, but when I started reading the Bible, like I started in Genesis and I started in the Old Testament, and I had to read the kids version because it's like I couldn't understand the words. Like literally the words, I would read it over and over and be like, what are they talking about? Like, what's going on? So really helpful. Like, if anyone is listening who is just getting into all of this, I think it is really helpful to read your Bible, but do it in a study situation. Either find a church, find someone. There's a million people online who do it. There's a million podcasts who do it. But I think that's the way to start. But yeah, I mean, I can give you some of my favorite sermons too. We can link that.
She's got the best collection of sermons and podcasts of any person. Like that one was the West Huff sermon was a game changer for me.
I know. They're honestly like,
everybody know this was last week. Week. I'm like, I saw this. So
it's so, and I just want everyone to like take take an hour and like listen to these things, watch these things, and then then have an opinion about it. Like, just give it a solid chance.
So there's like a list that I could compile of things that are like, okay, if you want to get in and talk about like the basics to get enough, some of the things that were really, Death to Deconstruction does a really good job. It is aiming at Christians that have left, or that are leaving, or that are having doubts, but it's about the Bible. Having doubts about the Bible. It is so good. And like, you don't necessarily need it right now because you're not in that phase, but it was so powerful in explaining explaining the truth of the Bible. One of the ways is like how we can believe the Bible, even if you don't believe it literally, how you can still believe that it's like a reputable document and you can still trust the authority, and like how to read it in a literary sense. Like, very useful, helps you understand theodicy, which is the really good proposition of how you can have a good and benevolent God in a world where there's suffering. And that has to do with us having free will, but like how we can have free will, how can there still be suffering and there's a good God? Like, he goes really well into that. If you're looking for things on like the afterlife and like resurrection and like the ultimate point of Christianity, the most important like modern book I think on Christianity, like that's most inclusive, would be N.T. Wright's Surprised by Hope. It is so good. It is a lot. It's like, if you listen to it, it's like 30 something hours, but it's really, really good. You can go, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel is not a fun read necessarily, but it is so good at making a case for like a historical case for Christ. Kingdom of the Cults does a really good job of explaining the history of other religions and how they fit into how they combine with the Christian worldview. That one is really good. I mean, really good for that. And then understanding prayer and how prayer works. I always say this all the time, but living like monks, praying like fools. And then I highly recommend that sermon from Wes Huff on another angle of why you can believe the Bible. Like those things are like those things in the Bible, like that will get you through probably 2 years of like Christianity at least.
More.
And the Bible recap.
Yeah.
The Bible recap is so good because you're not going to get everything at once, but it's a little bit, it's bite-sized, and she makes sense of, Sarah Lee Cobble makes sense of the Bible each day for you. She has a more reformed, like Calvinist sort of theology, it seems like.
Right.
But it's not something that she like makes, it's very accessible to all denominations. You could be Catholic, you could be Christian, it's still really good. So like the information and the resources are out there, but like I think once you just dabble in a little bit, you see like you can't, it's hard to dabble in Christianity. It's hard. These are not simple questions because it's not a simple religion. Right. We spend our life mastering things. Like you spend your life mastering whatever, martial arts or your visual art or Zen or yoga or I don't know, like underwater basket weaving or gardening or raising moths, like, right? Yeah. And but you don't expect to know everything you don't expect to like have this be like, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to know it all and I'm going to be the expert tomorrow. Like you're not, it takes time. The beautiful thing is though, it's not like you have to go get your PhD in it before you experience the benefits. The moment you cry out to Christ, the moment you call out to God and say, I want you, I want to follow you, I turn toward you, whatever it is, it starts then. Like life starts, it all starts right then to get good. But like you're not going to have all the answers. Have Christians in your life that are like experienced and know some things, but know that we're all total losers too. So like you can't trust us all. Jesus, not a loser. Christians, losers. Like because we're human. We're just all human and we all make tons of mistakes. And so like, please don't judge God based on me.
Yeah, I want to like just say in that vein of there's a lot of information and then there's like what's in your heart. So like I've kind of been separating this like the mental sanctification, like the mind and what it needs versus what the heart is doing are two different things kind of. And so I just want to make that distinction because I think that it could be helpful for some people as like my mind will start to wonder about things and like what is going on. And then there is usually an answer in the Bible, right? But it might take me a little bit of time to find that answer. Whereas like if that's happening and then I just kind of come back to like prayer and talk to God, like Jesus, and call him in and like just be in my heart with it. It's like I already know. Like as in I don't have the answer for the mind, but I have an anchoring in the heart. And so there's like, and that all needs to continue to sanctify and grow because like, you know, I'm just like renewed recently, but I think that distinction needs to be made is like you can go down the path where you just want to read all the books and you want to understand it and it's just a mental like kind of game for you and it might change you. It does to a lot of people, you know, and it might not, right? Like I don't know. But there's also the other way, which is kind of like it feels like more through the heart, more through prayer, more through like something that isn't really, it's not feeding the mental intelligence of it all. Like it's not
because it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's not the knowledge. Like maybe it's the knowledge versus like wisdom or something, you know, like maybe wisdom lives more in the heart and like knowledge is like more in the mind or something.
Well, I like
that.
wisdom. I like putting wisdom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should be clear. I mean, all those resources are things like, yeah. So what it is like what I'm saying about all those resources are like if you have questions, if your questions are why do you believe the Bible? Why do you think the Bible is the only way? Why do you think Jesus is God? Like those questions, those are questions that are answered really thoroughly in those resources I provided. So that's what I want to share. Like provide those resources. And those may very well speak to your heart, but like, you don't have to have any of that. You don't have to, like, your heart. There are people. So one of our other friends, Elise doesn't even know this, reached out to me today that has been planning to come on, Jen. And we've been trying to think of like a topic she wants to talk about. And she said, belief versus faith. And I was like,
Ooh.
we're so good. We're doing that. And this is like such a good segue, because that's what this is. This is talking about, like, that's all. You can do all that to have belief.
Yeah.
You can have, but you don't have to believe all of it yet, because you have to know something to believe it, right? Like, you can't, I'm not saying you could disbelieve it, I'm saying you don't have to know everything that you believe to have faith in Jesus.
Right.
Like, that's just not required. And that stuff is great and it's useful and you'll want it if you find Jesus, and it's fascinating. And I highly recommend you do read all that, but like, you don't have to. It is a heart thing. And the brain won't get there until the heart does. It won't. Not ever, not once, not ever. Yep. It's not possible. You can't think your way into heaven, into God. You can't think your way into communion with God. You can only like love your way in. And really, even that, you can only accept love. You can only receive your way in. Like, it's even more specific. I like it. All right. Well, this was kind of all over.
Yeah, but it was fun.
We said all the things. We said it in several locations on several
more things. If it wasn't my bedtime, like, we can keep going. It's just.
I know, no, but it's bedtime, and we had technical difficulties, and like people, we have like 2 hours of recording. I think it's long enough. But this was so good to talk about again, and like, I hope we're getting back in the groove. We're gonna be back with more. Ask your questions. You can ask, if you know us, which pretty much everybody who's going to listen to this probably knows one of us. So, or you can ask us questions. We're if you're listening to us, you can listen to us on Apple or Spotify or Podbean or I don't know, all the pod things. But we are primarily, like, first and foremost, housed on Substack under Theologyology. And so if you want to like subscribe and get other posts and hear updates from us, that's where you want to find us. But otherwise, you can also use that to ask questions. We currently are not paid, so questions are open to everyone. So you can ask your questions there. You can reach out to us, and you got really good questions. You want to come on and you promise to be nice, you can come on and talk with us about it. You got to be nice though. Kristin, thank you for making the time to talk with us. Just always and in general, but also today specifically.
Thank you for having me on again. This is so fun.
It was so fun.
Elise, thank you for being the best podcast co-host buddy in the whole world. And
sweet.
And being here with your pretty hair. And all right. This was wonderful. I love you guys so much.
I love you back.
Love you both.
Bye.
Bye.